Snow is falling outside, and a woman named Na-bi was carrying in her arms a bouquet of red roses through the streets before eventually arriving at an art exhibition. We then see Na-bi's world start to fall apart as she finds out that her boyfriend, Hyun-woo, had been cheating on her. After seeing him flirting with another girl at a bar, she goes up to him and confronts him, cursing him out, and officially ending their relationship. On the same day, a charming stranger comes to sit next to her, and at first, mistaking Na-bi for someone else, this stranger, whose name is Jae-yeon, cancels his blind date to stay with Na-bi. Instantly feeling a connection, Jae-yeon and Na-bi bond over his butterfly tattoo and darts, and as the days go on, Jae-yeon sticks to Na-bi's mind as she tries to move on from her ex, reminded by the butterfly that Jae-yeon drew on her forearm. One day she overhears Jae-yeon on a call with someone, telling them that he misses them, and decides to just put boys out of her head and bury herself in her work as a sculpture student. However, when Na-bi heads out one night, she finds out that Jae-yeon was a student at their art school, and they start drinking together. The next morning, Na-bi couldn't stop thinking about Jae-yeon, even going up to the smoking terrace, from which she can see into his workshop to check if he's working. With all this distraction, Na-bi hasn't exactly been working as hard as she'd planned. Luckily, Jae-yeon was there to help, and that night, he stays up late and they work together with Na-bi. By the time they say goodnight, Jae-yeon gives Na-bi his phone number and a kiss, and when Na-bi wakes up the next day, she wonders whether Jae-yeon was sincere with her or not, especially after Bit-na, Na-bi's best friend, warns her that he's a serious player. After having lunch together, Na-bi agrees to go to the club that night with Jae-yeon, and despite being uncomfortable when Jae-yeon encourages her to dance, Na-bi couldn't help but stare into his eyes. But when Jae-yeon steps outside for a cigarette and meets a girl with a butterfly tattoo just like his, whom he clearly knows well, Na-bi starts to feel really uneasy. Jae-yeon tries to downplay the situation by saying that he had merely gone to the same academy as the girl, and that's why he knows her. However, Na-bi, still reeling from what Bit-na had said, decides to leave anyway. Back at the studio, as Bit-na was taking photos of Na-bi, their session was interrupted when Jae-yeon arrives, fussing over Na-bi, asking if she's okay, and suggesting that they go out to eat. As time goes on, Jae-yeon's relentless texting carries on, and his missed calls even wake her up from a dream that she has about him. Waking up from the dream and suddenly realizing that she's late for a school presentation, Na-bi races to school and pretends to sleep to avoid Jae-yeon. However, when she suddenly feels her period start during her presentation, Na-bi rushes out and Jae-yeon follows, offering her his hoodie. Later at a restaurant, Na-bi sits with some of the other art students and her mood sours when Jae-yeon casually brushes off the idea that he has a relationship with Na-bi. Heading off to the bathroom, Bit-na follows Na-bi and tries to comfort her. However, when Na-bi talks to Jae-yeon about what he meant back in the restaurant, he replies by asking Na-bi why they have to date and why they can't just be close. Ignoring every red flag, including seeing him with another girl that same night, when Jae-yeon later gets Na-bi alone and admits to wanting to kiss her, Na-bi lets go of her better judgment and kisses him back. Na-bi's heart races as she feels a mix of excitement and confusion. Could Jae-yeon really like her? In the morning, Na-bi goes over her search history, and it's filled with questions about whether a kiss with a friend means you're dating, etc. Sol, another girl in Na-bi's sculpture class, interrupts Na-bi's thoughts, and after reading between the lines, hints to Na-bi that her feelings might be lust rather than love, a topic which happens to be further discussed during a class in which Bit-na talks about the differences between dating and a casual relationship. That evening, Na-bi, infinitely frustrated by Jae-yeon's new silence, especially after he was so clingy only days earlier, decides to go visit him but ends up seeing him with Seol-ae, a friend who just arrived from the airport. Escaping to a nearby convenience store, Na-bi gives her number to a junior student named Yoon-han, an interaction that Jae-yeon and So-ah happen to spot. Dismissing the situation, Jae-yeon claims that he and Na-bi were just friends, but as an old hand at Jae-yeon's many games, So-ah suspects more is going on. A few days later, Na-bi and Yoon-han start texting and even make plans to attend a festival together, although Na-bi ends up not being able to go when she starts feeling sick. In fact, all of Jae-yeon's interrupting and interfering ends up bringing Na-bi closer to Yoon-han, despite the fact that she was missing the spark that she felt before. Later at a market, Na-bi runs into Yoon-han, who it turns out is hanging out with a girl he used to like. Feeling rejected that night, Na-bi's phone dies in the middle of Jae-yeon's call, and he thinks there is some emergency and calls 911. On rushing over, of course, nothing is wrong, but Jae-yeon ends up nevertheless taking care of Na-bi and confessing how attracted he is to her. As the night ends, Na-bi and Jae-yeon kiss, and in the morning they wake up in each other's arms. That evening, Jae-yeon goes to visit Na-bi's apartment again, and this time to hang a butterfly suncatcher in her window, and despite all the red flags that Jae-yeon had been giving her since they met, seeing Jae-yeon in her apartment, Na-bi chooses to give in to her charm. Afterward, Jae-yeon shares with Na-bi his plan to get another butterfly tattoo, a symbol of their whirlwind romance. A lovey-dovey couple at night and strangers in the daytime. Although Na-bi knows that she likes a more stable relationship, she can't help but being swept away. During the day, Jae-yeon at one point goes to see So-ah and talks to her metaphorically about butterflies and letting them go free. Now keep in mind that Na-bi's name also literally means butterfly in Korean. Despite this, Jae-yeon tells So-ah that he doesn't want to let Na-bi go, at least not yet. When Na-bi calls to cancel her plans with Jae-yeon to visit her mother, while on the bus, she runs into her old school friend named Do-hyuk, whom she hadn't seen in 10 years. And then, as she steps on the train out of town, suddenly Jae-yeon shows up and grabs her hand. Later that night, after spending the day with Jae-yeon and realizing that while they might be physically close, she doesn't really know anything about him, Na-bi goes to Do-hyuk's very successful restaurant and he makes her seaweed soup, and it had been Na-bi's birthday. The next day at school, Na-bi and Jae-yeon were spotted flirting, and a rumor starts making its round about the couple. Na-bi even overhears some students talking about her being his new target, and how she is now going to ruin her school life by sleeping with him, etc. And is their relationship really doomed like everyone in her life seems to be telling her? Feeling like she has to address the rumors somehow, Na-bi goes to Jae-yeon's workshop and confronts him about whether he's seeing anyone else. And then just as Jae-yeon denies that he'd seen anyone else, some guy pulls up and hits Jae-yeon in the face. It turns out the guy is another brother of some girl. Na-bi was shocked and feels betrayed, though internally she's not that surprised, and calls their relationship off. When he nonchalantly agrees to end things, Na-bi walks away calling him a jerk, and although Na-bi was fuming, she struggles to let go of Jae-yeon and move on, so much so that her professor even expresses concern about her distraction affecting her work. After a failed attempt to contact Jae-yeon, Na-bi missing him ends up running into Jae-yeon the next day, and we learn he's been caring for So-a, who has severe anemia, although Na-bi didn't know this. Trying to distract herself, Na-bi goes to eat with Do-hyuk, who clearly likes her. I mean, he even makes an additional dish for her. But a few days later, Na-bi had to give a presentation about the theme of her sculpture, and ends up getting completely thrown off when Jae-yeon shows up out of nowhere. After the presentation, each sculptor was supposed to pick 3 helpers amongst the other students to give them a hand on their project. However, Jae-yeon was the only one who offers to help Na-bi outside of Jin-soo, with Jae-yeon admitting to Na-bi that he really likes her art, and thinks that it would suit his style and medium. They agree to work together. But despite Jae-yeon talking about how he wants to change, he was unable to not be flirty, staying close to her and teaching her how to use some of the tools that he works with. Later, Jae-yeon suggested they go together to see a famous artist as friends, of course, and just as Nabi starts to think she could be friends with Jae-yeon, she ends up bumping into Sol-ah, who admits that yes, she is dating Jae-yeon. Feeling like this is the last straw, Nabi takes the hairband out of her hair. Before they slept together, Jae-yeon put her hair up, and since then, that had been like their thing, and walks away. Storming away from Sol-ah, though not before making a pointed remark about how Jae-yeon likes his relationships casual, Nabi makes up her mind. She is finally over Jae-yeon and the mess that comes with him. Jae-yeon, on the other hand, really struggles to accept this, and over the next few days, he couldn't get Nabi out of his head, calling her constantly. Desperate to get away from Seoul, Nabi retreats to her aunt's place in the countryside, distracting herself from the chaos. As it happens, Do-hyuk was also gone home to his hometown, and Nabi ends up running into him while she was out on a walk. Suggesting that they go to the beach together, Do-hyuk makes her kebabs by the ocean, and basically, being the exact opposite of Jae-yeon, Do-hyuk reveals that he's never dated before. He also shares, much to Nabi's surprise, that she's actually his first love. Although he liked her all those years ago, Do-hyuk had overheard her telling a friend that she had a boyfriend, and as such, he kept those feelings hidden. Eventually, Nabi dozes off and Do-hyuk sleeps outside. As for Jae-yeon, he was struggling back in Seoul. With Nabi's studio empty, he was still not answering any of his calls or texts, and a while later, Jae-yeon finds out why. Talking with Sol-ah, she admits to Jae-yeon that she lied to Nabi about their relationship. Finding out why, Jae-yeon messages Nabi and they talk, but Nabi was having a great time back home, cycling and going to the market with Do-hyuk. Unfortunately, this mood comes to a crashing halt when out of nowhere, Jae-yeon shows up at her aunt's house. It turns out that Jae-yeon saw her cycling with Do-hyuk and followed them home. A tense atmosphere lingers throughout the day, only made slightly better by the arrival of their friends, who momentarily diffuse the tension. The awkwardness between Jae-yeon and Do-hyuk gets worse and worse as they end up in a car together with Nabi, heading to an amusement park. At the park, Jae-yeon's jealousy was palpable, but eventually on the Ferris wheel, he gets paired up with Nabi. Complimenting Nabi and trying to touch her hair, Jae-yeon brings out all of his flirting techniques, but it leaves Nabi cold. Sensing the mood in the room once they get back, Bitna directly questions Jae-yeon about his feelings, making hints about his past relationships, and likening them to Do-hyuk, who compared to Jae-yeon is the perfect stable boyfriend. Later during a drinking game, when asked who makes her smile the most, Nabi instantly names Do-hyuk, sparking visible discomfort in Jae-yeon. As the group settles down, Jae-yeon and Nabi find themselves alone. Seizing the moment, Jae-yeon confesses how much he misses her and gently kisses her. Despite Do-hyuk's calls, Nabi chooses to keep kissing Jae-yeon, and running into Do-hyuk after the kiss, Nabi was conflicted and phrased, and ultimately accepts Do-hyuk's offer to take her home. Despite his attempt to woo her with a bouquet of flowers, Nabi tearfully admits to Do-hyuk that while he's a good person, it's not really the right time for her. Lying about her feelings for Jae-yeon, Nabi explains that she doesn't want to see him either, and the next morning, calling their kiss the night before a drunken mistake, Nabi confronts Jae-yeon and ends up leaving back for Seoul that same morning, though not before Do-hyuk promises that he won't give up on her, though he really should for his own sake. Back at school, Nabi grapples with her feelings, especially when she notices that Jae-yeon is potentially being scouted by foreigners. With rumors swirling, Jae-yeon admits to Nabi that he is considering to move to America, and sticking to their arrangement, Nabi and Jae-yeon go to visit an art gallery together, but Nabi remains distant, especially after the shock that Jae-yeon might be leaving. Meanwhile, Do-hyuk surprises Na-bi the next day with a packed lunch, and they share a lighthearted meal, much to Jae-yeon's jealousy. Despite Do-hyuk's optimism about their future, Na-bi's heart still seems to be very much torn between a stable and happy choice and a dangerous and unstable but exciting choice. Later, Na-bi and Jae-yeon were talking in the bar where they first met, and Na-bi explains to Jae-yeon how while she likes Do-hyuk, she's afraid that he might see a part of her that will put him off. That's not a problem with Jae-yeon though, since their relationship had been so messy from the start. As Jae-yeon heads back to Na-bi's place to give her a hand with some chores, Do-hyuk watches from afar, misinterpreting the situation. Back in Na-bi's apartment, she and Jae-yeon get into talking about their past. However, when Jae-yeon leans in to kiss her, Na-bi makes the rare but smart decision to pull away. Sending Jae-yeon home, Do-hyuk texts Na-bi to chat, but she sends him away as well. The next morning, despite trying to put on a brave face, Do-hyuk was clearly affected by what he saw the previous night, even if it was mostly misunderstanding. With Do-hyuk debating whether he should in the end throw in the towel, Jae-yeon decides to double down on Na-bi, even making her a butterfly emblem. As for her project, well, Na-bi gets some harsh criticism from her professor, who was disappointed with her sculpture. Adding to her stress, Na-bi also finds out that she wasn't accepted for the exchange student program that she applied for either. With Jae-yeon seemingly successfully being scouted, Na-bi feels like her life was deteriorating. Unaware that Jae-yeon was listening, Na-bi confides in Do-hyuk about her school struggles, and deciding to keep the fact that he overheard her conversation a secret, Jae-yeon goes to see Sol-ah, who was on her way to the States. Determined to end her reciprocated crush on Jae-yeon, Sol-ah was headed to America. After a conversation with Sol, Na-bi realizes that if she ever wants to finish her project successfully, she has to figure out this situation with Jae-yeon. That evening, after meeting with Do-hyuk, who admits that he saw her with Jae-yeon and asks her whether Jae-yeon even cares about her at all, she finds Jae-yeon outside of her apartment. Grabbing her arm, Jae-yeon admits that he knew that she was torn between him and Do-hyuk and had been trying to manipulate her into choosing him. Na-bi responds by spitting out that she regrets ever getting with Jae-yeon, given how much he had hurt her. Going inside and slamming the door, Na-bi tells Jae-yeon that she doesn't want to see him again. The next morning, despite her harsh words the night before, Na-bi finds herself haunted by Jae-yeon's kind eyes, despite his countless red flags. As cool, Na-bi decides that she has to work on her project alone, but that becomes more difficult when Jae-yeon shows up, holding her hand and causing her to pull away angrily. Both Na-bi and Jae-yeon were grieving at the end of their relationship, which never even really existed in the first place. A turning point happens when Na-bi, walking into the studio one day, finds her statue project shattered into a million pieces on the floor. Her key piece for the upcoming exhibition was completely smashed, and Na-bi feels devastated, and as the rain pours down, Na-bi, ready to accept any help she can get to fix her project, takes Jae-yeon up on his offer to help her rebuild it, especially as he promises to leave her alone once they finish. Working tirelessly to piece the statue back together, as they spend day and night on the project, Na-bi begins to reevaluate her feelings toward Jae-yeon, and if he were truly such a heartless player, why would he be helping her like this? Eventually, they fix the statue and turn it into a rustic angel with ragged wings, and Jae-yeon, true to his word, having helped her finish the project, steps away after giving her a final compliment. Despite wishing that he would just leave her alone only a few days ago, Na-bi was far from happy. As for Jae-yeon, he packs up all of his tools, lets go of the butterflies that he was raising, and seemingly disappears into the night, leaving behind only a green book that he gives to Na-bi. Inside the book are countless sketches that Jae-yeon did of her, and the first one was when he spotted her across the room at an art exhibition, Yes, Jae-yeon hadn't met Nabi in the bar the very first time he had seen her was actually at the initial art exhibition, and he'd wanted to meet her again ever since. When whispers start circling that Jae-yeon had already landed in the US, Nabi couldn't believe that he didn't even say goodbye. Well, that's probably because Jae-yeon hadn't left anywhere, and instead he'd just been staying at home, lying alone and depressed in the dark. On the day of Nabi's final exhibition, everyone shows up at the gallery, including her professor, who even offers Nabi an opportunity to go to Paris. Despite the success, Nabi couldn't stop scanning the room for Jae-yeon, and where was he? After dinner, Nabi heads back to the exhibition and finally meets Jae-yeon again, and despite acknowledging the potential pain, Nabi nevertheless chooses to be with Jae-yeon once and for all. And in the end, Nabi and Jae-yeon's story ends with them walking hand in hand down the street.
And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.